So, what's the one thing that you need on your resume to get interviews every single week? Hi, I'm Dr. Emily, and we are going to dive into that in today's live. I can't wait to walk you through, and I'll even give you some tips on how to craft your resume to really shine and stand out. So, you're looking for a tech job, all right? You're looking to have an amazing quality of life, right? These tech jobs, man, they can start in the high fives, like 60 to 80K. But if you're a software developer, you can get jobs that are making 100K and more. And that's just getting started. So once you're in the career, you can actually start seeing salaries in the high 100Ks, 200K, 300K, 500K. I've even heard of someone as a software developer making $1 million. So the sky is really the limit once you've mastered these skills. Now, I got to be honest with you, mastering these skills is not for the faint of heart, right? There's some real problem solving and some real personal growth that may need to happen for you to get there. But if you're a lifelong learner that really enjoys working with tech and solving problems, this is totally the field for you. All right. So today, our focus is how do you get your resume in front of the right hiring managers so you're getting interviews every single week, no matter what. All right. And I'm going to be honest with you, there's one key thing that I've seen consistently, right? I have helped dozens of students get placed as six-figure software developers, or at least starting on that path in the high fives. And I can honestly tell you that there is truly only one thing that makes a difference. And I know this because students come to us having been on the job market, banging their head against the wall, and they're not having success. They're not getting interviews. And they join our program, and there's a certain point at which all of these same students start getting interviews nonstop. Are you ready for it? It's experience. Now, you might be wondering, oh my goodness, how do I get experience when I'm just getting started? That's why I want a job. I want experience. But here's the thing, is that most companies don't want to train new developers because it takes a really long time. Most training programs don't actually prepare students for what they're really going to see in a live workplace, in production, in deployments. And because of that, most companies do not have the bandwidth to train. So they're all looking for experience. Because at the end of the day, anyone can show up and say, they can Google and say, hey, I know JavaScript. But do you really? Do you know how to put it into practice? Do you know how to work on a team? Do you know how to do live updating, right? So that when you make a change to the code that's live in production, you're not, making it worse. You're not degrading the service for the thousands of users that are out there. And so, most companies that are a great first step for entry level are really shy about hiring entry level developers because they can't tell if the person can actually do the work. But if you have experience, if you've been paid by somebody for a year or more to do this work, then they know they can hire you. And yet, entry level workers like yourself, software developers, they're a total gold mine for a company because you're willing to accept pay that could be potentially a third to a tenth below what you're actually worth just to get that experience. So there's a gap here, and we can bridge it, right? We can bridge it, and you can bridge it as well. And the way we bridge that is with experience, right? Experience allows us, right, to bridge that gap because as soon as you have experience on your resume, now all of a sudden, oh, okay, now you've got something to work with. And it's amazing as soon as our students get experience on their resumes, right? And we do that. We do offer hands-on experience on live software projects for paying clients for our students as part of our training program. It's called our Guaranteed Internship Program. And we know inside the Joy of Coding Academy that hands-on learning is the most effective. And that's why we originally started it. But the other flip side of this is that not only is it the best way to learn how to become an expert software developer, it's also what you need to get interviews every single week. And that's what we find, that the students, as soon as they have that internship experience on their resume, they are landing interviews left and right. Now, to get the offer, right, the interview gets your foot in the door. But to get that offer, there are a couple other things that need to come into play. And I don't have time to go into all of them right now today. But this Thursday, I'm doing a resume writing workshop. What I'll do today is kind of describe at a high level some things to be looking out for. And then I'll go deeper on Thursday and I'll even get to review some resumes. And that could be you potentially if you'd like. So I want to make sure that we have that all set and ready to go. So we are talking today about what needs to go into your resume, right? So experience is number one. And I know as someone just starting out how frustrating that can be, but there are opportunities for experience. And so the Joy of Coding Academy is one of those opportunities. So what else do we need in our resume, right? What else is required in our resume? And so one of the things that we need to pay attention to is also the formatting of the resume. So how are we placing that experience? How are we putting it in front of, right, our potential hiring managers that might give us an interview, right? So there's definitely some things we want to include and some things we don't want to include, right? And to be honest, there's no hard and fast rules. This is why having someone actually look at your resume and give you feedback can be so helpful, because they can look at it from, a higher level view versus, when we're creating our own resume, right? We're looking at it, and it can be challenging to know what should be there, what shouldn't. We understand the value these pieces have. And sometimes it can be hard to divorce ourselves from, taking our resumes personally. So having someone else, like a mentor, giving feedback on our resumes can be really, really valuable. And so on Thursday, I will invite a select number of resumes to be reviewed live in our workshop. So if that's something that you'd like, don't hesitate to reach out. You can feel free to DM me and I'll talk to you about that process. All right. So we'll talk today about a little bit more about the format, right? What do we want to include versus not including? So things that we want to include on the resume is going to be anything related to tech. We're going to want to include it. But not only that, right? We want to showcase like what our skills are and what experience we've had with them. Okay. So it's not enough to just say, I know JavaScript. Okay. If you Googled or you went on ChatGPT, they would give you a resume that said, I know JavaScript, right? That's an example programming language. But how does an employer, a potential hiring manager, know how deeply you know, not how deeply you know JavaScript, but what you can do with it? How can you use JavaScript to add value to that company, right? So they're going to be looking for words. What did you do with JavaScript, right? Because it could be, I took a free Udemy tutorial on JavaScript. That's not going to cut it when you walk in the door, right? Like that's like you got years of learning ahead of you if that's all you've done. Or I use JavaScript, even better is the specific framework. I used React.js to, update a PWA. You can spell that out, right? Like that, it's a web app that allows you to view it both on web in a browser and on mobile, right? And so I used it and we updated live deployments, right? I used it to fix bugs. I used it to do logging. Like, what are the specific areas of the software development lifecycle that you were able to help and contribute using that technology? And that goes for every technology you know. So often I see these boilerplate skills sections at the top, and that's a great summary, but it doesn't show anybody what you actually know. Realistically, your resume might only get about 10 seconds of attention, maybe 30 if you're really lucky. And we have some tricks up our sleeves for helping you get even more attention on your resume, right? So one way is if you have a connection, that is going to increase the time that someone spends on your resume, which is excellent. But at the end of the day, it's not about that bullet point list of technologies. It's what can you do? It's what value can you add? And this is what the hiring manager is looking for, because they're getting a ton of resumes. And I'll be honest, I've heard stories of people who have swiped resumes from other people. This makes it really hard for those of us with integrity to be able to actually craft resumes that sell ourselves, especially if we're lacking in confidence. Because what you have to understand is that these jobs are very lucrative. And even someone who gets one and gets fired because their skills don't match up with their resume, they've still made boatloads of money, right? Tens of thousands of dollars potentially, even if they're only working for a month or two. So it's very hard for companies to find good people. They constantly complain to me, we can't find good people. right? And yet I know there's so many good people looking for jobs. So it's really just a mismatch in the matchmaking department for job hunt, is that it's so easy to pretend you know when you don't, right? And so for someone who really truly does know and is humble and perhaps maybe lacking in confidence, right? This can be a real game changer in revamping your resume to really speak to what hiring managers are looking for. And that's the value that you can bring to their company, right? And so there's other things that we can do to increase it. But at the end of the day, being able to articulate the value that you bring, right? Not just your skills, not just describing who you are. Because at the end of the day, yes, they're hiring you, but they're really hiring your potential of what you can do for them. So we need to craft your resume so it speaks to them and the value that you can add, the value that you can bring. It's not just about you. And so in terms of like what to include versus not to include, anything related to tech, you're going to want to include it, right? Anything in tech, you're going to want to include. And you can also include things not related to tech, but you want to do it carefully and strategically. So for instance, let's say you had a job as a waitress, right? If you have more experience doing other things, I wouldn't use it. But let's say your only other experience is at the Joy of Coding Academy's guaranteed internship program. Okay, well, you don't have a lot of job experience, so you need to include all the job experience you've got. Okay, so how do we take something like being a waitress and I call it spinning it, but really we're positioning it so that it really speaks to, the values that you can bring. So maybe this job opportunity involves, it doesn't even matter what the tech job is, but you pick out some keywords from the job description. Let's say it's, a full stack web developer position, and it involves working on a team. So what you would highlight from being a waitress is, how did being a waitress or a waiter help you work on a team, right? Worked on a team to effectively, right, solve some problem or reach some outcome. And again, that's actually a really important piece of this, is how do you explain things, right? So I've heard this explained in two different ways, and I'll share this with you today. And then I see some awesome questions, so I can't wait to share those too. So I'll definitely dive into those. But how do we explain what we're putting on our resume, right? So we have A, B, and C, right? So it's an ABC approach. You can use this on resumes and in interviews. So A is, what did you do, right? B, how did you do it? And C, what was the result, right? That's one way of looking at it. I've also heard it called XYZ. This is the traditional Google style resume format, where you accomplished X as measured by Y by doing Z. And you'll notice they all have this same overlap, these same elements. Is that, what was your accomplishment? What did you do? What means did you use to do it? And how did you know you were successful? What was the result that was created? And so ideally, what we want to do is, for as many of the bullets on the job description, we want to look at and describe our jobs and accomplishments in that lens. Now, I know this might seem like a lot of work for just one position. And to be honest, I find that our students are more successful, not when they apply to hundreds and hundreds of positions, but when they apply to a couple that they really have a connection with, right? It only takes one interview and one offer to get hired. However, to get that one interview, we might have to apply to a couple hundred positions. It's true. But what if we could apply to fewer and have greater chances of success? At the end of the day, if we're just blindly applying our resume everywhere, there's less than 0.5% chance that we'll actually be interviewed. So we definitely need to do some of these other techniques to increase our chances of success. And one of the ways we can do that is really, formatting a resume in a way that speaks to the value that we can bring, and having experience on there and being able to articulate that experience and what we provided, right? These are really, really key components. Awesome sauce, folks. All right, sweet. So I have a couple questions here. I definitely want to take those. So Jonathan, yep, need to update your resume. Awesome sauce. We'll definitely help you out. If you're ready, happy to give you some tips on Thursday. Super awesome. So Rick is saying, for myself, I'm pivoting my career towards coding. Absolutely. As a retired network engineer, yep, I coded simple things for configuring networking and routers and searching logs, and you're looking to code new things. That's awesome, Rick. That's awesome. So Rick's resume, maybe has less than 10 years. That's a great question, right? So sometimes we are switching careers and we have a lot of experience in another place and we're trying to switch to become a developer or a coder. In that case, it really is case by case basis, Rick. So if you want to come on Thursday, I'm happy to dive into your resume with you. But it really depends on the types of jobs you're going for and the kind of impact that you've had and like what you can bring, right? How much coding experience do you have versus how much other technical experience you have? Some students that are a little bit more advanced in age, a little more mature, they may remove the dates off of their graduation for their degrees so that that's not necessarily, shining in the forefront. You can include your information on your resume or not, right? You could trim it to just 10 years if you wanted, right? It's really going to be up to you. It's really going to be up to you. And it's something you might have to try out and test out because a company that values maturity in an individual and a contributor might actually be interested in that. So again, it's a fine line. I would definitely, without a doubt, remove anything that's not super relevant. And so that should make it easier. Great questions. Awesome sauce. Great questions, folks. So Jonathan, what percentage of them are hackers trying to fish for info? Ooh, this is also something to be very careful of, is that there are, I don't know if I'd call them resume sharks, but there's some job hunt scams going out there where they say, so there's two scams that I've heard of. One is the technical interview is really you doing work for free for the company. And then the other one is they offer you a pretend job just to get your information. They think they pretend that they're HR and actually offer you a job, and they sell your information or you get your identity stolen. And so you want to be really, really careful that you've spoken with someone from the company, that you can do your independent research, like verify that this person is with the company. They should have a LinkedIn profile. I mean, you can create pretend profiles, but go deep enough that you're like, okay, this would be like a lot of work for somebody to do, right? This is probably legit. And so you want to, just be cautious about who you're talking to. Because again, a lot of this interview process is virtual, right? So it can be hard to say. But don't be afraid to ask if they're a legit company, right? Like you just do it kindly and politely. You can apologize. I'm sorry. I've heard of, or I've experienced job offer scams in the past. Can you ask them for something? Sending them an email from the domain of the company that you can independently verify, I think would be a really simple thing. Like a Gmail account is going to be a really big red flag. Or if they're sending from an account that's not from the main domain of the website, those are all red flags that you can use to help filter. Great question, Jonathan. Great question. Yeah, I'd rather filter down to legitimate job offers. Absolutely. And that's another reason why, we always advocate for connections, because it's one of the fastest ways to increase the attention that your resume is paid. Because when you have your buddy stand next to you saying, hey, did you check out Joe's resume? He's a good friend of mine. I think he'd be awesome for the company. Guess what, right? Joe's buddy just got you more than 30 seconds looking at your resume, because now he either has to interview you or articulate to his buddy why he's not, right? So this is really key. Like having a connection and social engineering your first job opportunity is absolutely the fastest path for sure. And another benefit is if you have a connection, it's legit, right? There is something to be said about hybrid roles where you do have in-person interactions. It's a lot easier to confirm that something is true and not a scam when you are in person. I mean, the flexibility of virtual can't be denied, but it does cause, some additional challenges. But again, ask for information, right? Look for evidence, look for your own evidence, and, you'll be set up for success. At some point, we do have to trust, but just be cautious. Look for red flags, things that are sloppy and messy. It's not super clear sometimes, because people trying to hire, if it's a small to medium-sized company, they may not have their own HR department. And so the staff may be trying to interview you themselves. And so they may not have these clear systems. So use all the resources available to you. And you can always check and ask others and really just do the due diligence, right? It should be fine. Great questions, folks. Great questions. So if there's any other questions, please don't hesitate to ask. But I'm super excited because I'm really, really excited this week. I'm doing another resume review workshop. This was fire the last time we did it. We had so much fun. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk through exactly what needs to go on your resume. We're going to go a little bit deeper than we had time to do today. And, we're going to talk about the formatting, what to include versus not to include, landing the behavioral and the tech interviews, right? To make sure you've got that dialed in, getting to the offer. How many potential job applications do you really need to get hired in 6 months or less, right? And so we're going to be diving into some of these questions, and we'll continue this inside our lives as well. But we want to make sure that you have everything you need to be successful, right? So if you've been on the job market and you've got a resume and you're really looking for some expert feedback, please consider joining us this Thursday. I will send around a link with more information. In fact, let me put this here right now. You can sign up right now to join us this Thursday. I'm going to put this link in. Awesome sauce. So if you want to have your resume be considered, right? Reach out to me. You can DM me on whatever platform, right? Or you can text us. There's a real human on the other end, and we'll get you started. All right, folks, super, super awesome. Cannot wait to see some of you this week at our next resume workshop. All right, folks, have a great rest of your day, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Happy coding.